So I just want to say thank you to the kind introduction. Thank you for the organizers for inviting me to speak today. It's truly an honor to participate in the 18th Global Webinar on Traditional and Integrative Medicine. Before I begin, I'd like to make one important point. The information I'm presenting today describes an observation wellness project and a development of a proposed wellness model. My purpose is to share observations, discuss the rationale behind the approach, and encourage continued research and scientific discussion. It is not intended to present claims regarding the diagnosis, treatment, cure, or prevention of disease. With that in mind, I'd like to begin with the question: could there be a complementary, non-consumable approach that supports the body's natural regulatory processes while working alongside existing wellness and healthcare procedures? That question led to the development of the broad spectrum detox, or BSD. Today, I'll briefly share why we asked that question, how the concept developed, and what I observed over a 30-month period, and why I believe it may contribute to an important conversation about the future of integrative medicine. Let's begin. Whoa, uh-oh. I'm not going to the next slide. Hang on, let me come down here. There we go. Sorry about that. Before we continue, let me briefly tell you how this work came about. My professional background has combined research, education, and the development of individual wellness systems for many years. Throughout that time, I became increasingly interested in one question: how can we better support the body's natural ability to maintain balance in the face of increasing environmental stressors? That question led me to develop Broad Spectrum Detox, a personalized, non-consumable wellness approach, and ultimately to conduct a multi-year observational study evaluating changes in systematic balances over time. My purpose today is not to suggest that all the answers have been found by any means. Rather, I'd like to share the observations from that work, explain the reasoning behind the approach, and hopefully contribute to an open scientific discussion about new directions in integrative medicine. With that background, let's begin by looking at the challenge that inspired this project. Before discussing broad spectrum detox, I think it's important to step back and look at the environment in which we now live. Today's world is very different. It is just than it was just a very few generations ago. Every day, people encounter a wide variety of environmental stressors. These may include heavy metals, industrial chemicals, agricultural chemicals, mold-relative compounds, air pollution, pharmaceutical residues, highly processed foods, and many other environmental exposures. Individually, any one of these exposures may be relatively small. However, they rarely occur in isolation. Instead, they accumulate over time and may place increasing demands on the body's normal physiological regulatory systems. As practitioners and researchers, many of us recognize that maintaining wellness involves much more than good nutrition and healthy lifestyle choices. It also involves understanding how the body continually adapts to an increasingly complex environment. That naturally raises an important question. How can we best support the body's normal ability to adapt, regulate, and maintain physiological balance in the presence of ongoing environmental stress? That question became the starting point for the project. Once we recognize the complexity of today's environmental exposures, the next question becomes, how do we best support the body's natural detoxification processes? Today, there are many excellent wellness approaches available. These may include nutritional supplementation, dietary modification, hydration, exercise, sauna therapy, lifestyle interventions, and many other supportive practices. For many individuals, these approaches can play an important role in an overall wellness program. However, they may also present challenges. Some individuals are highly sensitive and have difficulty tolerating certain supplements. Others struggle with long-term compliance because many programs require taking multiple products over extended periods of time. These observations led us to ask a different question. Rather than asking how to develop another detoxification product, could there be a complementary, non-consumable wellness approach that works alongside the body's own natural regulatory processes? That single question became the foundation for broad spectrum detox. That question is the starting point for this work. What if detoxification support did not require ingestion? You're already full to the max of toxins. Why try to put something more into the body? That's what I kept saying. And so this question is very important to us. Many wellness approaches involve all kinds of supplementation and all the things we just talked about, the dietary changes. They work, they may be appropriate for some individuals. However, they may not be suitable for everyone. And we were finding more and more people who were doing all of those things, but they were not detoxifying. And so I asked a new question rather than just saying, how do we develop another consumable product? We asked a very different question. We asked, could there be a complementary, non-consumable wellness approach that supports the body's own natural regulation processes that was not ingested? That simple question came to the foundation of broad spectrum detox. Having asked whether a non-consumable approach might be possible, the next question became, how would such a system be designed? You have to think outside the box. If you keep going down the same path, you're going to keep getting what you get. We've all heard the old saying, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you get. But we looked at pharmaceuticals and they didn't seem to be doing much good for people, and everybody has access. Then we looked at supplements. Everybody has access to supplements, but look around. There are a lot of people that are not well. So we had to step aside and think outside the box. When we started thinking outside the box, of course, we believe in biology of belief, Bruce Lipton, who's a dear friend, and he turned me on to a book called The Secret Life of Your Cells. And that got me thinking that there was another process that we could look at. And if we looked at something outside the box, we may find something new. And that book has been instrumental in getting me to think outside the box. We looked at what we could put together to make a product that was non-ingestible. We went back to Nikola Tesla and we found that he first used high mineral sand in a little bottle that he would use his violet ray machine with. And then he also, or the sand actually becomes the mineral matrix that contributes stability and conductivity to the overall system. The second component is copper. Copper was selected because of the well-known conductive properties as well. The third component is crystalline materials. Certain crystalline structures exhibit piezoelectric properties and have been widely studied because of their ability to respond to physical forces and electrical phenomena. The fourth component is individualized frequency programmed wellness information. The intent was to personalize a wellness support system for each individual rather than using a one-size-fits-all approach, or a cookie cutter, as I call them. Cookie cutters aren't working. Look around this world. Together, these four components form a personalized, non-consumable wellness support system. Rather than relying on ingestion, the system was designed to remain in the individual's environment and complement the body's natural regulatory processes. At this point, we had a concept. The next question was no longer how the system was designed. The next question was whether observations collected over time would support continued investigation of the approach. Then we had to look at the science. Sorry, I'm having an issue here. Now that I've introduced the overall design of broad spectrum detox, I'd like to explain the thinking behind it. Every research project begins with a question. Our question was whether supporting normal biological communication could help the body maintain physiological balance while adapting to ongoing environmental stressors. We know the environment is full of those stressors. That became our working hypothesis. Broad spectrum detox was developed as a personalized, non-consumable wellness support system. Rather than introducing another substance into the body, the concept was to explore whether a proximity-based wellness system could complement the body's normal regulatory processes. From a biological perspective, the human body functions as an extraordinary complex communication network. Every second, billions of cells exchange information that helps regulate normal physiological activities, including adaptation, energy management, immune function, and overall homeostasis. Our hypothesis was that supporting the natural communication network might be associated with measurable changes in overall physiological regulation. If that hypothesis had merit, we expected to observe changes over time that would justify continued investigation. All this stage, we were not attempting to draw conclusions. We were simply asking whether measurable observations would support further research. That question led directly to the observational study I'll share with you next. Designing a concept and developing a hypothesis are only the first steps in any research project. The next step is to ask a more important question. What do the observations actually show? To explore that question, we conducted a 30-month observational study comparing an experimental group with a control group. Our objective was not to provide a conclusion. It was to explore the question. Our objective was only to observe whether measurable differences developed over time between the two groups. At the beginning of the study, we worked with 50 experimental group that had an average risk of 6.2. You can see on the chart on the right, 6.2 is where the experimental group started. 6.36 is where the control group started. Each group had 50 people. So we looked at the overall averages and they were encouraging, but it raised an important question. Were the observations limited to only one or two categories, or were similar patterns seen across the broader assessment? When we examined the individual categories, we found that the trend was remarkably consistent. Progressive improvement was observed across all of the categories included in the study. You can see where the time period is and then what we studied. We studied the bacteria and chemical and emotional and etc. across the screen. So all of those were studied. You can see at 30 months where they all ended up. What I found particularly interesting was not any single category. I didn't see anything that just stuck out like a sore thumb. What I saw was the overall pattern. Rather than seeing isolated changes, we observed a broad trend across multiple areas of the assessment. From a systems perspective, this may suggest changes associated with overall physiological regulation rather than changes limited to a single pathway. It's important to emphasize that these are observational findings. They do not establish cause and effect. However, they do suggest that additional research into this type of personalized, non-consumable wellness approach may be worthwhile. You can see that in the experimental group, they had a decrease of about 45% in their toxin level. You can see that the control group that did not carry the bottles with the programmable individualized energy frequencies inside of them went up about 11% in that same time period that the experimental group went down by 45%. So what I saw was there's a big difference. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we get. But if we do something different, we have a chance to eliminate the toxins within our body. And this was all measured energetically. So that's energetic measurement of those frequencies and those toxins. One of the questions we asked after reviewing the overall study results was whether the observations were limited to only a few categories. And you just saw that it was all of the categories. It's broadly across the entire assessment. When we examined the individual assessment categories, we observed a remarkably consistent pattern. By the conclusion of the 30-month observation period, the observed risk scores were within the low risk range across all 12 assessment categories included in the study. These categories included everything that you've seen there, the bacteria, chemical, emotional, food, etc. When we say geopathic, we were looking at the 5G, 6G, 10G, the dirty electricity. Also, we were looking at what was in the ground underneath the house, the water, the minerals, anything that could be environmental that was near that person that would be affecting that person. And the nanoplastics are the micro and nano plastics that we're ingesting. Rather than seeing isolated changes in only one or two categories, the observations suggested a broad pattern across the assessment as a whole. They do not establish cause and effect. However, they do suggest that the personalized wellness approach may warrant additional investigation through future research. For me, the most interesting observation was not one category. I have to keep saying that because we never expected all 12 categories to be clean and clear. For me, the most interesting observation was the consistency of the overall pattern. When we work with anything in research, we're looking for a repeatable, consistent pattern, and that's what we were looking for. And that's what we found. 100% of the participants carrying the individual bottles of frequency infused sand dropped their toxins. Why does this even matter? What difference does it make? I'd like to step away from the numbers for just a moment, because ultimately this project has never been about improving scores on a chart. It's about people. It's about supporting people as they strive to maintain active, engaged, and independent through their lives. It's about helping people maintain the energy to do the things that matter most to them, to enjoy their families, to enjoy their work, to participate in their communities, and to continue living meaningful, productive lives. And integrative medicine, we often focus on helping people after problems have already developed. An equally important question is whether we can better support wellness before these problems become more significant. That question inspired this work. The observations I've shared today do not answer every question. In many ways, they raise new questions. They encourage us to continue exploring how personalized wellness approaches may complement nutrition, healthy lifestyles, and conventional healthcare. Ultimately, I believe the goal is not simply to live longer. The goal is to support the quality of those lives. If this work contributes to that larger conversation, then I believe it has served an important purpose. I'd like to conclude by stepping back from the details of the study and looking at the broader picture. Throughout the history of medicine, progress has often begun when someone asked a different question. The question that guides this work is not, how do we create another supplement? We don't need another supplement. The question was, how can we better support the body's own natural regulatory processes? I stepped outside the box. In fact, my husband will tell you, I don't even know that there is a box. I have been out of the box most of my life, and I just ask different questions. And like I said, the book, The Secret Life of Your Cells, gave me a thought that I could do something different. If future research continues to support observations like the ones we've shared today, I believe they may contribute to the broader shift in how we think about wellness. Not replacing conventional medicine. If I have a broken arm, I want to go to somebody that can fix that broken arm. I don't go to a energy worker. I don't go to a medical intuitive. I already know what's wrong. We don't replace conventional medicine. We're not trying to. We're not replacing physicians. We're not replacing proven therapies, but we're complementing them with approaches that supplement the body's natural ability to regulate, adapt, and maintain physiological balance. To me, that is where biology, systems science, personalized wellness, energy medicine, vibrational medicine, and integrative medicine begin to come together. This isn't simply about one technology. It's about asking whether future wellness approaches can become increasingly personalized, increasingly supportive, and increasingly focused on maintaining health before more significant problems develop. I believe that conversation represents one of the most exciting opportunities in the future of integrative medicine. I'd like to leave you with one final question. What could these observations mean for the future of medicine? Throughout history, let's say the last 250 years of medicine. Actually, I'm speaking starting on Monday in Washington, D.C. with the Healthy America people on the next 250 years of medicine. Let's say throughout history, the last 250 years, medicine has continually evolved. Every significant advance has started with someone asking a new question, exploring a new idea, and then testing it through careful observation and research. I believe the future of healthcare will continue to build upon the extraordinary achievements of conventional medicine. At the same time, I believe there is an opportunity to expand our thinking, not by replacing what already works, but by exploring additional approaches that may complement healthy lifestyles and existing healthcare practices. Perhaps the future will place even greater emphasis on supporting health before more significant problems develop. Perhaps it will become increasingly personalized. Perhaps it will focus more on strengthening resilience and helping people adapt to the challenges of modern life. And perhaps observational research, such as this, can contribute to that larger scientific conversation. I don't believe broad spectrum detox is the destination. I believe it is the very first footprint I have left in the sand. At this time, I'm researching many other things, and they'll be coming very soon. I believe broad spectrum detox represents one step, one tiny step in exploring what the future of personalized wellness support might become. If today's presentation encourages thoughtful discussion, careful research, and continued investigation, then I believe it has accomplished its purpose. I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Throughout history, medicine has made extraordinary advances. We have become remarkably successful in diagnosing disease, treating disease, saving lives. Those achievements have transformed healthcare, and they will continue to do so. But I believe the next chapter in healthcare may be even broader. It may not be defined only by how effectively we manage disease. It may also be defined by how successfully we help people maintain health through their lives. That is the question that has guided my work. Now, how do we replace medicine? Not how we replace medicine, but how we complement it. How do we give people additional tools that may support their body's natural ability to adapt, regulate, and maintain wellness in an increasingly complex world? I don't believe broad spectrum detox is the destination, like I said. I know more things are coming. I believe it's one of the approaches, a journey toward more personalized wellness, more prevention, more resilience, more collaboration between conventional medicine, integrative medicine, and scientific research. And I thank you for the work each of you does every day to improve the health and well-being of others. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And thank you for inviting me to be here.